We have a report breaking down the asking price for the Toronto Raptors' top 4 stars ahead of this year's trade deadline, including Gary Trent Jr., Fred VanVleet, OG Anunoby, and Pascal Siakam. So we'll discuss that, as well as what an NBA executive had to say about the Toronto Raptors' sort of plans ahead of this year's trade deadline, and what the Toronto Raptors front office thinks of CJ McCollum, the head of the NBA Players Association, making some comments that could be considered tampering on a recent podcast. So lots of stuff to dive into. Without further ado, let's jump to the first topic of discussion. The first thing we're taking a look at is an updated asking price for Toronto Raptors stars. Now, we've heard a multitude of reports. We've heard a bunch of things come out from different NBA pundits about what the Toronto Raptors could potentially receive for their top guys out there on the open market. You know, guys like Gary, guys like OG Anunoby. But Doug Smith came out today and gave his breakdown on the top 4 guys from the Toronto Raptors regarding what he's heard and, his just insider knowledge of the team. And he had some pretty interesting takes. And the first one, which really turned my eye, gave me a second look, is OG Anunoby. Because he says, as he's on a good contract, a tremendous defender, 3-point shooter, right, it would take at least 2 promising players on team-friendly contracts and a pick to pry him away. Now, this is a little bit of a change in tune in terms of what we heard from other reporters, other pundits regarding what OG Anunoby could command on the open market, as Zach Lowe a few weeks ago famously came out and said, at least amongst Raptors circles, that the Raptors could receive a Donovan Mitchell-esque package for OG Anunoby. Then last week or a few days ago, we heard that, the Raptors are looking for at least a DeJounte Murray-esque package, which would, the San Antonio Spurs received 3 first-round picks in that deal, as well as a pick swap, I believe, or a protected pick. So, that's what the Toronto Raptors, we've been hearing for at least an OG Anunoby deal. Everything indicates that the Raptors want a haul, but this seems a little bit more dialed back, more indicative of what the Toronto Raptors were asking this offseason from the Portland Trailblazers, as we were looking for Josh Hart, Shaedon Sharpe, a future first, and one of their other guys like Nasir Little or one of those dudes on Portland. So, are we going to get one of those massive hauls of draft picks back for OG Anunoby? Doesn't seem like what Doug Smith is indicating, but still a big return for OG Anunoby. I know a lot of people want Dyson Daniels, want Herb Jones from the New Orleans Pelicans. They also have a few draft picks that they could send over, so they're the team I could see really making a deal with if a potential package does go down for OG Anunoby. But OG is not the only guy that they ended up speaking on. Basically, he said for Fred VanVleet, the cost of re-signing him is substantial for any team looking to acquire him. But if that hurdle is cleared, he's a proven winner, a great leader, and will fetch at least the Anunoby price, if not more. So this is interesting coming from Doug Smith, as he's saying that Fred VanVleet commands more value than OG Anunoby on the open market. Now, I know people have been roasting me about me supporting Fred VanVleet on the podcast, even though I feel like I've done the bare minimum in terms of Fred VanVleet support. Doug Smith is out here saying that Fred VanVleet would command the same type of package as OG Anunoby, even with his poor performance this season, him being a lot older, and him being an unrestricted free agent this summer. So that's interesting. That is a very, very interesting take. I don't know, again, Doug Smith, he's an insider, so maybe he has some inside scoop. Maybe the Raptors value Fred VanVleet that highly, but that is fairly interesting as part of the reason why I don't think Siakam or Fred VanVleet will be traded in my prediction so far this year. But let me know what you guys think about that one. To go on with Pascal Siakam, basically 3 for 1 plus picks. We all know how good Pascal Siakam is. I don't think really any, unless the diehard tank absolutists. No one wants to get rid of Pascal Siakam, so that makes sense. Big package there. And then for Gary Trent Jr., he's a flat-out scorer, and they aren't readily available for a lot of teams. And the Raptors would ask for a player and multiple picks in return. Now, again, we've heard different things about Gary Trent Jr. Like a couple weeks ago, we heard that Gary Trent could potentially command just a late first-round pick out there on the open market. So Doug Smith seems to be very much valuing our guys, which I appreciate. Amongst a Raptors supporter, he might be getting fed this from the Raptors front office, what the asking price will be for these Raptors guys. But let me know what you guys think about these potential packages coming back for the Toronto Raptors. And if you guys are interested in potentially betting on where these Toronto Raptors guys will end up, definitely check out the CoolBet app using the link down in the description. CoolBet's a sportsbook regulated in Ontario. They're available all across Canada, and they give you odds for every single Raptors game, NBA game, any sport really in general. And They also have the odds for all these guys getting moved for this season, right? You can bet on where Pascal, Gary, OG, Fred will be following this year's trade deadline. I know a lot of people have some strong opinions on that, so if you want to put your money where your mouth is, definitely check out the Cool Bet app. Want to have some fun with this year's trade deadline, make it even more exciting for the diehard Raptors fans, definitely use the app down below. But next thing we're taking a look at is an NBA executive speaking out on the Raptors' current situation heading into this year's trade deadline. Now, we've heard a bunch of nameless executives sort of give their opinions, give their takes on, the Raptors setting off fireworks ahead of this year's trade deadline. And obviously, every executive, everyone in the league front office that gives quotes do have an agenda. But this executive had a pretty interesting take in regards to the Toronto Raptors' current situation, basically saying that this week, a team might be able, in referring to the Raptors, to make only one truly bold move at the deadline. But any kind of major remake is best done with a larger group of players and partners around the draft or free agency. And that's how Masai Ujiri and Webster have operated, even during the Tampa Tank season. When they knew that the group had run its course, they made just one relatively minor deal, swapping Norman Powell, who they weren't going to pay this summer in free agency, for a less expensive, younger version of the same player in Gary Trent Jr. Now, that was also worded by Doug Smith. I don't like how he just threw Norman Powell under the bus there. That Norman Powell trade felt big for me. So, he's basically indicating, the NBA executives indicating that's unlikely the Toronto Raptors will completely blow up the roster during this year's trade deadline. If they do end up going in that direction, it'll be something likely this summer. But, if there's Victor Wembanyama and you on this year's draft, and blowing it up now means you can get some lesser picks and stuff, and teams are still, our top talent is still very valuable out there in the open market. I don't like waiting. I'm not a big fan of waiting, but I guess patience is key. That's why I'm not running the Toronto Raptors front office. But let me know what you guys think. If that means the Raptors won't make a move, if you agree with this NBA executive saying, let me know in the comment section below. Next thing we're taking a look at is Toronto's front office calls out CJ McCollum's tampering. Now, this one's pretty interesting, as the Raptors kind of leaked to Doug as well. A lot of this video has come from that Doug Smith article, but basically how they're feeling about CJ McCollum's interesting comments the other day regarding Toronto Raptors players being unhappy and deals could potentially go down. He's like, I'm not going to get into it because of tampering and stuff, but CJ McCollum has a pretty high standing in the NBA as the lead of the Players Association. So this is basically what the Raptors are currently saying about CJ McCollum. So the players hear the podcast of New Orleans guard and NBA Players Association president CJ McCollum detailing the disappointment of the season and apparent disenchantment of some players, and chalk it up to business as usual. Maybe McCollum is making a subtle move to convince the Pelicans front office to make a serious play for a specific Raptor. How would an OG Anunoby look in a New Orleans roster? But even though in my video I speculated it was more likely Gary Trent Jr., given they were teammates in the past and all that sort of stuff, I digress. But basically, Smith goes on to say that, or maybe he's extrapolating on feelings about the underachieving Raptors throughout the league. There are those in the organization, the Toronto Raptors organization, that believe that it's intemperate for a union president to be talking as he was about another team, but the overall reaction is, oh, well, it's just another thing. So the Raptors aren't happy. They didn't come out and publicly really go at CJ McCollum, but they said it's not really something someone in his position should be saying out there. They said that to Doug Smith, and that's definitely fair, right? CJ McCollum, in the position he's in, especially with his relationships with guys like Gary Trent Jr. and those connections and the impact it can have, the fact that he's supposed to be a representative of all the players, it's kind of a weird look that he's the one coming out saying these things. But that's what players do. Again, you could speculate whether or not that's pushing the Pelicans to make a potential deal with the Toronto Raptors, but definitely some interesting stuff. And I like the Raptors at least gave a subtle jab to CJ McCollum, following those comments. But the final thing we're discussing in this video is the Raptors re-signed shooting prospect. And this happened a couple days ago. I didn't get to fit it in, as there's just been we've been loaded with news over the past few days. But the Toronto Raptors came out and they gave Joe Wieskamp a second 10-day contract. The 23-year-old did not suit up for the Raptors during his first 10-day deal, but he did play one game with the Raptors G League affiliate, the Raptors 905, and he did have a nice shooting performance in that one. Again, from our comment section, people are saying he didn't look great on defense. I didn't watch the full game. I looked at the box score. Definitely knocked down some threes. You know, was highlighted, didn't watch the full thing, but apparently he struggled out there on defense regarding what people have been saying. So I'd like to see Joe Wieskamp get an opportunity on the actual roster. Maybe not ahead of a guy like Jeff Doughton or Delano Banton, but if we have him signed for a 10-day contract, show us what he can do. Nick Nurse, Masai Ujiri, why are you bringing him in? I guess get your bag, Joe Wieskamp. Do your thing out there, but you know, play the guy some minutes if you're going to sign him for a 10-day contract. But folks, you guys are the best to make it this far. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Definitely check out the Cool Bet Sportsbook. We're almost at 28,000 subscribers, so hit that sub or 27. Reaching ahead. I guess we're almost at 28 too. So definitely hit that sub button if you made it this far. Anyways, I'm signing out. Cheers.